What is up, homies? Welcome back to another review from Heroes Reforged. Today we are talking about Venom. Let There Be Carnage.
Man, I'm loving all the voices tonight. All right. I wish the movie Venom Let There Be Carnage was this fun. All right, should we...
Oh, man.
That's a spicy meatball.
Cut it off right there. That's all we need to say. Just cut it off right there.
Augustine he reminded us that we're going to do a non-spoiler little quick discussion and then get into it with spoilers, because there's definitely some stuff that we need to spoil to end up talking about the movie, but just sort of like
the big spoiler.
The big one. But just to catch everybody up, Augustine had not seen the first Venom movie, which came out in 2018, until like last week. When y'all came over to my house, we watched it in 3D. I imported it from Germany. So that's at the level of how much I enjoyed the first Venom movie. Okay. And Adam also enjoyed it. And so we watched it again, this time with Augustine. It is a dumb, fun movie. It is in the same, to me, world as like the Fast and the Furious. We enjoy those for different reasons, but sometimes kind of same reasons. So like, we're in that world, but it's definitely not as good as Fast and Furious, the franchise, but it's in there. And so we got all prepped to see the new one. Then we went to go see it separately. Adam saw it twice. I saw it once in 3D. We all saw it.
That's right. Yeah, I've seen it twice.
Yeah, you did. You saw it once flat, and then you went and saw it again in 3D with Augustine.
In Dolby Cinema. Holy shit, that was loud.
Very nice.
Still couldn't hear what Venom said, though. Anyways.
The 3D was cool. Let's get that out of the way, too. The 3D
was cool.
I actually really did. I really liked the 3D, and that was the big thing when I saw it the first time in 2D. I was like, you know, there actually might be some stuff in here that I'm really going to enjoy in 3D, and I did. I actually was really impressed how, for the most part, it was very, very clean. Sometimes for us, because we worked in the 3D conversion industry for so many years, we can pick up a lot of the imperfections. But that movie, the first one in kind of a while, where I've watched it, I'm like, I'm just watching a 3D movie and I'm not really noticing any problems. It's a very party in the back movie.
So part of the reason why I don't watch as many 3D movies as you guys do is because I'm so distracted trying to find all the errors in the 3D, right? And it takes me a long time to get my head out of that like quality check kind of mentality. But in this movie, there was no flyaway hairs that were bugging me. Like the depth seemed all correct on all the characters. And so I was like, ooh, I can relax and just like watch a 3D movie. And it was actually pretty good.
To explain what you guys are talking about, Augustine, when you say flyaway hairs, when you do 3D conversion of a film, sometimes there can be, like Adam is pointing out on his better camera, a little hair that doesn't get picked up and brought to the character, but instead stays on the background, and so it's all kind of...
So this flyaway hair in 3D depth will be like in the back by the wall, and you're like, that's not right.
That would be a mistake unless they kind of do a really good job of that quality correction. And then Adam, you said it's definitely a party in the back movie. What does that mean?
So that means that most of the depth kind of lives in the background. Like there's some stuff that comes out of the screen, but most of the depth is felt when you look into the window. So everything in the background, you know, and they're not fully building out a lot of stuff in 3D. Like some of it is cardboarded, which means it's just flat, but they just put in 3D space. But I think it worked for this movie, though. I think it worked. I think if it was too overwhelmingly party in the front where everything is coming at you, your eyes would not be able to adjust to it really well. There's actually the opening logos of the movie, the Columbia Pictures logo, when the camera pulls back from the statue, the torch is like... in your face, and it was like hard to look at for a second, but other than that, it was great.
And listen, and don't discount it too. There was some good like chompy bites in 3D. There's some good little Carnagey moments and Venomy moments with, you know, coming up at the camera, so that's fun. I don't know if I enjoyed much else from the film. What can you guys say for the overall non-spoiler thoughts of this movie?
Well, here's what I will say about the movie. I continue to like the relationship that Venom and Eddie Brock have. And I think Tom Hardy playing both roles, obviously it kind of lends itself to being as chaotic and manic and fun as it is. And outside of that, I was kind of bummed that like, it doesn't really make me feel the same way that the first movie felt. Like the first movie was very much 90s action and kind of nostalgic. And I think it worked for Venom because Venom is a very 90s character. This movie had so many elements going, and none of the spinning plates really mattered. The only thing I was like, I just want to see more of these two idiots going at it and having a very troubled marriage. To me, that was the more entertaining part than the actual story, which is kind of a bummer because I know that Kletus Cassidy Carnage is a really, for the most part, popular character in the Spider-Man universe. But the story kind of worked for me. There's parts of it that worked, parts of it that didn't. But I never really felt fully invested. So when we get to the climax of the movie and the big stuff happens, you're like, I just hope Eddie and Venom are okay. And that's kind of it.
I would agree with that. I also, have to agree. Well, there's a spoiler that I want to talk about in terms of the Eddie and Venom relationship.
Yeah.
Augustine, any other sort of overall thoughts, non-spoiler?
I really wanted to give this movie a really super glowing review because nobody ever wants to watch a bad movie. But at this point, I don't think I could call this movie good. But there was no moments that I absolutely hated. It was just kind of like a very middle of the ground movie that could have had a lot of things cut out. Carnage's girlfriend Shriek didn't really have to do anything.
Naomie Harris is in this movie and you're like, why is this amazing actress in this movie and not doing anything?
Yeah, exactly. Nothing is really happening. And there's so much that could have been done with a character that could easily disarm a symbiote, you know? They just made her kind of annoying, which is really dumb. There was nothing in this movie that made me go, I hate this. It's dumb. It was just kind of presented, and I feel like it was right in the middle of being super goofy, like funny, and then super goofy annoying, which was kind of weird because I found Venom's relationship with Eddie a little bit more annoying because I felt like it was very kind of, I still don't understand why they like each other other than that they're both losers on their planet, which is to me isn't a good reason. Like, I don't hang out with you guys because I think you're pieces of shit, you know? Like, I don't I'm friends with you guys because I'm like, well, these guys are as stupid as I am, so I'm going to hang out with you guys. To me, that's not a compelling enough reason.
It feels like, to kind of, I think, sum up my feelings too, is that it feels like things happen in this movie because that's how they are in the comics versus like, no, you prove to me why Eddie Brock as a character would bond and have a relationship with Venom, the alien creature, as a character.
Right.
And then tell me why Kletus Cassidy would be doing the stuff he's doing as a character and why he would versus, and maybe that stuff is there on paper, but it's presented in such a cliched kind of a standard way. When they started to tell me that the Naomie Harris character Shriek, that she was like, Kletus Cassidy's like, you know, childhood love, and that they're supposed to be together, but that they're psychopathic, and everybody's pointing out like this is an homage to Natural Born Killers, another amazing Woody Harrelson performance. But I'm seeing this stuff and I'm like, I just feel like I've seen this, whether it was the flashbacks in the movie or even the present day stuff when Carnage and Shriek were going around being Carnage and Shriek. I'm like, I've seen this 1,000 times, and it is so generic. And even Woody Harrelson being Woody Harrelson, I'm like, I don't think that the character was allowing him to do anything unique, frankly. His villain turn in the third Planet of the Apes movie is immensely memorable. And that's a character that came out of nowhere. Alert. It's a but he's the bad guy in the third Planet of the Apes, and he's a character who's not in Planet of the Apes 1 and 2. He just appears in the third one.
Yeah.
And his character in that writing for that movie was so good, and his performance, it was amazing. And I was hoping that this movie would do something similar for Woody Harrelson to play this character. In fact, I thought he was going to be a co-lead with Tom Hardy. And I'm like, if you're going to do that, if you're going to do the sequel and the movie's going to be Carnage and Venom and they each have as much like real estate in the story, awesome. Then make them great and have the writing be really great.
Especially with the spoiler that we're going to talk about later. Like, so how cool would that have, well, we'll talk about it later.
I think overall, we can pivot. I think we can pivot now into actually talking about the movie. So if you haven't seen it and you don't want it to be spoiled and you've avoided the internet, but you clicked on our video, thank you, but you've avoided the big internet spoilers and all the articles.
Can I just say one thing before?
Go watch it. Yeah.
This is one of the rare movies where I feel like the spoilers don't even matter. Like, what's a spoiler in this movie other than the mid-credit scene? Nothing, really.
Nothing.
No, other than I could ruin it, and now we're in spoiler category, so you guys can't be mad, but I could tell somebody, oh, Venom, the alien, goes to like a gay club and says he's coming out of the closet. And that's an interesting moment in the film. And it's like, if I told somebody that and then they knew it was coming, that might ruin their enjoyment of it and the surprise of it, because it does sort of come out of nowhere. And yet what I just said
a bad joke
was more interesting. I know. And what I said was more interesting than what's actually presented in the movie. So the first spoiler that I want to talk about is that Eddie and Venom break up in this movie. And I feel like it was the writers sort of spinning their wheels, because I'm like, y'all fixed that problem at the end of the first movie, didn't you? They like each other, right?
Yeah.
I wanted to see a full movie where they were bonded, Venom, we are Venom, and just have them be, you know, in each other's heads or whatever, but the movie still had to, like a sitcom, find a way to split the gang up so that they could, do the same thing where they're fighting each other. And I'm like, that should already happen in the first movie.
Yeah. And that's already kind of typical of sequels in superhero movies too.
Absolutely. To just repeat the steps. It's like you've already set everything up as the status quo, go forward from here, instead of spending 90 minutes because I'm like, especially what the hell's going to happen with Venom going forward? It's like, how much has he changed as a character from the beginning of the first movie to now? 2 movies later, none change,
none at all. No,
and you can pull any 2 MCU movies of Marvel Comics superhero characters. If a character appears in both of those movies, and the characters have some kind of a change, even if it's like even a cosmetic change of a costume, like Thor from the first movie to the end of Thor: The Dark World, there's a little something in there, especially a change by the time you get to Ragnarok. Especially a change by the time you get to the Avengers movies after. Captain America changes immensely. The Iron Man character changes. Like all these, even Doctor Strange has changed from his first movie. It's just so frustrating that didn't go anywhere. And just to talk real quick about how a lot of folks have praised that the movie makes a reference to like maybe Venom is gay, maybe he loves Eddie Brock, because we talked about this when we saw the movie at my house, that like Japan or China had an entire advertising campaign about like Venom being kind of a fun boyfriend type character to Eddie. That stuff is subtext in the first movie. And in this movie, frankly, it was frustrating that to me that I'm like, you guys are going to continue to make it subtext. Either go for it or don't do this. Because to have the character go to like a gay club and talk about outsiders and being an other and everything like that, I'm like, I'm at a point where I really just, I'm not interested in characters like this that are stand-ins for actual marginalized people. I'm like, we still really haven't had a gay major superhero character, right? We're going to get one in Eternals. Technically, Trini, the yellow,
at least,
cinematically, technically, Trini, the yellow Power Ranger from the Power Rangers movie from 2017, was a gay character, and it's like, is that the only major like theatrical? So there was a frustration on my part where I'm like, just do it, just actually do it with one of these characters. If Sony was brave enough to be like, you know what, Venom is gay, maybe Eddie Brock isn't, or maybe they're both are, or maybe Eddie's bi, or maybe Carnage is gay in this version, or like they could have done so many different things, but that whole scene just made me kind of feel like it was the writers acknowledging some of that subtext without actually, I don't know. It was just frustrating.
I don't see it that way. I don't see it that way. I see that as a really bad joke that almost borderlines on offensive. Like that's I just don't see it that way, because there's nothing else in this movie that gives us that besides a little quip like that. But maybe seeing into their relationships. But once again, like I don't feel like this relationship is even a functional one to begin with. So I can't say that these two are homies enough to be in a relationship. I wouldn't want to be in a relationship with a person who wrecks my house all the time and is just like, come on, that's really terrible. So that's kind of discounting, like people being in really great relationships.
Because Venom shouldn't be a hero. He's the bad guy.
No, that's the problem, and that's why that's why the trailer thing bugs me, or the end credit scene bugs me so much. I don't know. Should we talk about it now?
Yeah,
we're in spoiler territory, baby.
Okay, we're in spoiler territory. So the mid credits multiverse tie-in. Eddie Brock and Venom are officially tied in, watching Peter Parker from the Marvel Cinematic Universe on screen, and it's such a shoehorn thing in. And I was talking to Adam about this after the movie. I couldn't even muster the words to say after I saw this. I was like, but you guys have spent 2 movies making Venom a hero when he's Spider-Man's greatest villain. We haven't even given Thanos 2 entire movies, and he's the greatest threat the MCU has ever seen.
Yeah.
Like suddenly we're supposed to believe that a villain like Venom is going to come in, and we're supposed to believe that he's just the bad guy all of a sudden. Like, where's the character change that's going to happen that makes Venom the greatest threat to Spider-Man at one point? After we've seen Mysterio, after we've seen this whole multiverse craziness. What are you thinking? This is so stupid.
It's 100. It's
now
100%.
I'm frustrated again.
It's 100% putting the cart before the horse. And I feel bad because Andy Serkis is a really talented guy, and he directed this movie. And I'm rooting for the cast in these movies, and I'm rooting for Sony to also make good movies and to contribute. And I love Spider-Verse, and that's Sony Animation, and they did, in my opinion, the best solo Spider-Man film. The other frustrating thing is that this is the cart before the horse, and this is something that is the opposite of earned. The Marvel Studios spent 10 years earning things like the Infinity Saga, earning things like the multiverse storylines that they're
Mm-hmm.
now getting into in their phase 4, all this other stuff. They're like, they earned
The long game.
the long game. They earned the chance to go into space, and then afterwards to bring in magic, and then afterwards to go to Wakanda, and then afterwards to go to all of these different genres. And now Shang-Chi is the next one. Now Eternals. They've earned enough goodwill that they can come out with a movie that is the Eternals. And Sony shortcutted this. They didn't spend any of their 2 movies building up any kind of a reason for this to happen. And in fact, they used the Spider-Verse animated sound effect, warping of reality. So now Sony is pulling what the Spider-Verse storytellers did and worked their asses off.
I didn't even know that.
Correctly.
Now I'm even more frustrated.
No. Oh, 100%. And you could tell that it was Sony being like, well, maybe in the future, our animated Spider-Verse will acknowledge this. You know, it felt like it was the filmmakers for Venom 2 leaving it to everybody else to figure that out. Because I heard Andy Serkis talking about this and saying we wanted to do this, but leave enough sort of question marks and things open so where the story could go in the future. And to me, I hear that and I go, that's because you guys didn't have a plan. Unfortunately, there was no reason for this to, you know, with Venom licking the TV and being like that guy. And I'm like, why would
you don't know anything about him?
Kill Tom Holland. There's
who is he to you? Who is he to you? You don't know shit.
Nothing.
You don't know shit.
Nothing. So Augustine, I don't think this happened because Venom tapped into his alien hive mind, which was for like half a second. I'm like, oh, this could get interesting. We're actually going to go there.
Thing that they said.
Yeah, they set that up, but then it warps, and then Venom goes, "It wasn't me, Eddie." And so I think either they knew or because they use their Spider-Verse sound effect, but I think they might now leave it up to the Spider-Man No Way Home filmmakers because Sony has access to them because they're sharing that. So like they must have heard how that's shaping up to be a multiverse thing. And hell, maybe Eddie Brock, Tom Hardy, Venom is in that movie. We don't know. He might be in that movie, and this might be the explanation for where he shows up. But really, Spider-Man No Way Home will probably have its own explanation and go from there. I don't know. I'm expecting to see him in it. I'm expecting not to see him in it. It could go either way. It just this feels so inorganic and forced.
I feel like it's absolutely inorganic and forced, and I'm hoping, best case scenario, that this is something that can easily be brushed under the table and just like, well, it was just a preview. Like somebody, like it just kind of goes away. It's just something that he saw, and maybe he'll think about it sometime in the future in his own Venom franchise or whatever. Because we don't necessarily have to pull at this string, right?
Yeah,
there's nothing saying we have to follow this.
They cannot help.
But I know what you're saying, Hector. I know what you're saying because the money is there, the draw is there. It's there, 100%. I'm hoping that they are smart enough to give other people a shot at this before they decide to go full bore into the MCU. And to go back to what you were saying a little bit earlier, Hector, about the foresight about seeing this stuff. I'm not saying there has to be 100% foresight because we started this MCU with with Iron Man 1. Nobody knew that this was going to happen. There was just a small idea, and seeing Nick Fury at the end of that movie was just like the spark that ignited everything, right? I'm thinking they wanted to capture that same spark with this scene, and it didn't. It's not the spark that we need at this point because we're way past something like this. And this character of Venom is so confused as what he is in his own movies. I don't think he belongs to fill that role of like Venom. Like Marvel Comics Venom is legendary. Like Marvel Comics Venom is probably the coolest character Marvel's ever designed. Like to me, it captured my imagination as a kid. I love that he was this big black alternate version of Spider-Man, like that shot webs from the top of his hand. So it looks like he was making a fist every time he was shooting, with these long nails and gnarly teeth and green saliva and that big black spider mark on his chest. That's what made him super iconic, and it's like 80% there, and now they're bringing that half-assed 80% into the MCU. It's just so, oh God, I can't.
I think the big thing too about the whole idea of the MCU is, yes, they did make an Iron Man 1 movie. Already for like a year or two, Kevin Feige was telling people, whether it was at Comic-Con or in the industry, was saying, if Iron Man 1 does well, we want it to lead to the assembly of the Avengers. And from there, it'll springboard into multiple franchises, multiple phases, all that stuff. So there always was an idea. There always was this engine that was like...
This would be nice. It would be nice.
Exactly. And if Iron Man 1 does well, then we have the opportunity to really explore this. with this movie, when they did the last Venom, when people asked about like, well, crossover with Tom Holland, well, we're doing our own thing and we're going to do our own Spider-Verse and it's not really interconnected right now and there seemed to always have been, the studios always seemed to be at odds because you had Feige saying like, well, Spider-Man is this. And then you'd have people at Sony, like Amy Pascal, saying Venom and Spider-Man, yeah, it's loosely connected. And I'm like, well, which is it? Are they connected or are they not connected? And I feel like if you are going to let Disney play with your Spider-Man cinematically, shouldn't you two be on the same page of like, okay, we're going to do a Venom sequel. We're going to sprinkle the seeds in for him to be inserted into the MCU. Now that they've done this, is Marvel Studios going to produce Venom movies or is just Sony going to make them?
No.
What does that deal look like? And on top of that, if they're not going to use any other character from the MCU or who has crossed over into the MCU other than Spider-Man himself, then where's the connectivity? Like we saw Michael Keaton in the Morbius trailer. So like, is that the most connectivity we're going to see? Are you going to be able to reference the events that have happened in the MCU? It's so just like
what's
unclear.
funny is I want somebody at Marvel Studios to come out and I never want to hear from them that like the TV show Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. isn't canon. I just want to keep pretending that it is. I just want to keep pretending that like Daredevil on Netflix and those shows are still canon. But I actually want somebody to come out and go, no, the Venom movies are not canon. They're not in art. Like I want somebody to definitively push that out because Venom, we have been saying since 2018, these two movies now, they are a throwback and they feel like a superhero movie pre-2008. What does that mean? It means like it's a superhero movie from the 90s. It means like it feels like Ben Affleck's Daredevil. It feels like Tim Story directed Fantastic Four. It feels like Nicolas Cage Ghost Rider. It feels like those movies. Now imagine if Nicolas Cage Ghost Rider,
which by the way, I'm fine with.
They have their place. They're fun.
I like Batman and Robin, so hello.
Yes. Yeah. But imagine if Batman and Robin all of a sudden like had some time warp and those versions of those characters popped up in a Zack Snyder Justice League, like Superman, we're here to meet you. People would be like, these two things don't fit. Yeah. Let alone that there's already a Ben Affleck Batman. Forget about that for a second. But just the tonality of those two things, just the way that one approach was made for one of those movies versus another, it wouldn't fit. So this feels like it would be if like the Tim Story Fantastic Four was just shortcutted into the MCU. Instead of like the MCU has the rights to why wouldn't they just like start over from, and like they did with Tom Holland and create a Peter Parker? They didn't just take Andrew Garfield. They didn't go back and rehire Tobey Maguire because those two versions of Spider-Man come with their baggage, good and bad. And I love those movies as well, but you can go back and watch the first three Spider-Man movies, Sam Raimi ones, or even the two, Andrew Garfield ones, and those feel like they don't have the type of plan and forethought that Kevin Feige had when he was describing even before Iron Man 1, like you're talking about, Adam. Yeah. Like those movies were made one.
And I don't think that was the point. That wasn't the point of those movies. Those movies were meant to just be Spider-Man movies. That's it.
Yeah, it's really, really frustrating. Yeah. I of course I want it all to be good, but I just feel like there's a kid who studied really hard in school, and then there's another kid who's just leaning over and copying the answers. You know what I mean? And I feel like the first kid where I'm like, no, you could have studied.
Do your own homework, dick.
I invited you over to study. I invited you over to come to my place. We had a study group, and you told me, no, it's fine. I'll do it on my own.
Yeah.
I don't want to. I don't want to share answers with you, and I don't want to have to like work on a group project. I'll do it on my own. And now you're copying me, and now you want to play.
Yeah, and I think ultimately that is the good and the bad of the MCU. Is the good is that we got to see a company and a group of creators execute a really good plan. Is it flawless? No. Have there been ups and downs? Plenty. But they know how to adapt to the mistakes and the highs and the lows really, really well and very efficiently and effectively. Whereas I feel like literally any other studio that's tried to do some sort of connected cinematic universe, they haven't been able to do without having a ton of problems. And I think it's because they're always trying to shortcut. Always.
And I just wanted, especially the Sony stuff, if they said we're doing Morbius, we're doing Venom, whatever, fine. They're gonna do Kraven. I think it's a bad idea, but fine. You guys, you have the rights to those characters, do it. Yeah. I especially wanted Spider-Verse to stay its own thing. And this mid-credits thing inadvertently looped in the animated Spider-Verse rules of that world into the MCU kind of. And I'm like, no, it's not like I'm saying everything needs to be MCU or nothing. Right. I'm fine with Marvel putting out cartoon shows, TV shows, video games. Obviously, their comic book line has been going since the fucking 30s, and it's different than the movies. The movies are not the end all be all. And I love Spider-Verse for being its own separate thing where they could do whatever they and now it's technically tied in, and now so is Venom. I just wanted Venom to be like its own series of silly, goofy, fun, you know, a little edgy movies. Like it's a PG-13, they get one F-bomb, and in that Venom says, fuck this guy, and chomps his head off. You're not going to get that in an MCU movie. That's great. I wish the whole movie surrounding that moment were better so that I could really enjoy it and dig my heels into it. If a studio wants to do its own stuff with Marvel properties, go for it. But if they're trying to play in the same sandbox as the MCU, trying to do that same thing, don't even bother. Just link up.
They're trying to shoehorn themselves into it. That's the problem.
Exactly.
It's like when the car is full and you got that one person who's like, "Hey, let me in, let me in." You're like, "There's no more room. I'll make you room."
Oh, come on, man. Come on, it's COVID and you're not even wearing a mask. Get out of here.
And I think that's the other kind of like part of the conversation is people are always like, "Why is it always MCU or nothing?" It's totally not the point. It's not the point at all.
No, that is.
I am also very much fine with Venom, them just making Venom movies, them just making, you know, movies on all these characters. But if it doesn't need to be tied into the MCU, then like don't. Just because fans say we'd love to see Tom Hardy and Tom Holland in a movie together, great. You don't have to do it. You can just tell them, well, we're gonna leave the door open for maybe a new interpretation of the character or something. It doesn't matter.
I bought the action figures. I can do that whenever I want. I just put up the Tom Hardy Venom and the Tom Holland Spider-Man. There you go. That's what it's gonna boil down to. That's the visual.
They didn't see my GIF where I say that tweets don't equal news. Like just because people are saying they want it doesn't mean like they have to. You know, it's fact and this is it. They're like, well, I guess we got to do it. Sorry, guys.
I wonder how much of that decision was also motivated by, you know, after Spider-Man No Way Home, we don't know what the future holds for Spider-Man in the MCU. Is there a situation where that Spider-Man could get, I don't think this will happen, but, you know, is there a situation where that Spider-Man could be teleported back into the Sony universe? It would be really dumb. It would be really unnecessary. So I feel like the answer to that is for them to say, well, then we'll just make it part of your shit. And then we'll intermingle everything. And I'm like, this just sounds so messy. And, you know, if Sony continues making Spider-Man movies after Spider-Man No Way Home, and it's not a Marvel Studios production, then like,
don't bother.
I don't know. I just feel like it's so all over the place. And even just like trying to decipher what the hell they're doing, I don't know.
I can see a lot of people already. I can see people in the comments saying, "Shut up, guys. We want to see Spider-Man movies where he's not tied into Tony Stark, where he's not referencing the Avengers, all that other stuff." The thing I keep saying is like you can get that with a good script where he still just happens to be set in the world that he's set in. You can still get a great Peter Parker played by Tom Holland with Zendaya as MJ or whoever else you want to be in the supporting cast, focused story. But he still is going to swing by Avengers Tower or whatever
that's it.
Like, honestly, you know, to just be able to recall the experiences that character's been through. Hate to break it to you, but he's been through experiences with Iron Man and Nick Fury. Like, that happened to this kid. So let's go forward. Some of my favorite Spider-Man comics are very much, and favorite Spider-Man comic moments are very much from a Peter Parker where he's in this lived-in universe. So you can have that stuff. It doesn't have to be mutually exclusive. Don't worry. They can, you know, I hope that Kevin Feige and all of the creatives on their end are able to keep that deal going so that they can just keep working with that cast and whatever else. The other thing I want to say too is the theater that I saw it in, they seemed to really enjoy the movie. They were laughing at certain parts. They were like, there was little kids in the movie theater. And they were like almost a little scared at some of the scary parts. And I was like, great, because this is like a kid-friendly Halloween movie with an F-bomb. Like it was, even though he's like a murderer, it's like so over the top and corny that there's nothing scary about Carnage to me. At the end of the movie, the kids really lost their shit, and some of the adults and the parents too, with the Spider-Man Tom Holland thing. And again, I feel like it's because most regular people, they don't know about the intricacies of these dumb franchises the way we do. They don't study this shit. They don't care. So they see that and they go, oh, I didn't know that. Oh, okay, so they're going to meet in the next one. It's like, no, they may not. That's not.
Don't get too excited.
We had one person next to us, Adam. I don't know if you heard him, but the guy was like, oh, that's Peter Parker. And I'm just like, yeah, man. Yeah. Well, I was like, do you understand what this means? Like, keep going. Keep pulling at that sweater string. Keep pulling at that.
The first screening that I went to, which was 2D, other than the incredibly loud Dolby Cinema sound system, Dolby Atmos sound system, nobody said a damn thing through that whole movie. The only reaction was the mid-credit scene. You know, I've gone through social media and I've seen what people said about Venom and all that stuff. Very much a lot of people just kind of like skirting around the it's not a very good movie thing and talking about the relationship with Venom and Eddie's great and the mid-credit scene is great. And I'm like, you can't base the quality of a movie on a mid-credit scene. There's a whole 90 minutes that happened that you've completely disregarded.
To bring it back to what you guys were saying at the beginning of this, the post-credit scene for the first Iron Man movie is, at this point, it is like Hollywood history. It is such a smart thing that they did. It's Samuel L. Jackson who showed up for an uncredited cameo, super secretive day on the set. They filmed it. It was like when Mark Hamill reprised Luke Skywalker for Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Like super secretive.
Spoiler alert.
Cool. Hey, hello.
Dang, Hector, you just dropped it.
And yet, people don't talk about the movie Iron Man with only talking about that. They talk about the rest of the movie. Because it's a solid 2-hour good movie. Yeah. It's a good movie. And that just happens to be the cherry on top of the whole thing. And this movie is like the opposite of that. This is like a caved in upside down cake, and somebody ran by and they put a really good looking cherry on top, but the cherry's like falling in and it's covered in some frosting.
Molten. It's fucking molten.
Okay, chef.
I think that kind of sums up everything about the movie. I think if people are only talking about the mid-credit scene and they're talking about the relationship between Eddie and Venom, but they can't tell me what the motivation is behind any of the characters or what the arcs are of the characters, then like
it's a failed movie.
It's not good. And it's fine. Like it doesn't, I'm not asking for a Denis Villeneuve Dune movie. I'm not asking for it to have a lot of depth, but at least like attempt something. Attempt anything.
I said on Twitter, I want it to be as good as the first one, whereas the first one for me dropped the ball with like the villain. Like I didn't care about Riz Ahmed's character. Riz Ahmed's a great actor. Riot. Riz Ahmed's a great actor, and I didn't care about his character, and I didn't care about the big silver Venom at the end of the movie. But now I'm like, Woody Harrelson and Carnage, I like both of those things. So this is good. This has to be better. And they dropped the ball completely with Carnage. I think they could have had something really, really cool and good and unique, and with a cherry on top. But now I don't want any piece of that cherry. I don't ever want to see this movie again. It made me even dislike the first one more. That's how much. And now I'm like, I don't even like the first Venom anymore. Like that's where I'm at. You know,
I'm still happy with the first one. I'll keep that one.
I went to go see the new Bond movie early, and at the end of that, it's a movie that I love. At the end of it, I was like, I like all the Daniel Craig Bond movies even more now because of how good it was.
You know, we all know how these conversations go, because I think a lot of people come into our videos and they expect, these guys are gonna love Venom because I loved it.
Yeah,
I'm glad. That's not how it works. Guys. If you loved it, though, look, like I'm not mad at anybody who liked this movie.
No. I don't want the people who are watching this to take away the fact that just because we said what we said does not take away from your experience. If you love this movie, I love you for loving this movie, because you are looking at a life perspective that I don't have, and that's great. That like if this movie spoke to you, that's 100%, and we love you for that. If you felt like we did, that's perfectly great too. You don't have to agree with us. You know,
I like Batman and Robin.
Sharing our ideas.
Everyone else hates it.
Bro,
it's fine.
Kung Pao Enter the Fist is one of my favorite movies of all time. Come on, man. You cannot say that movie's good.
Let's bring him into the MCU. Come on, let's do that.
Let's bring Let's bring him in.
Do it.
Yeah,
bring Kung Pao in.
Totally. Might as well.
Guys, let us know in the comments below what you thought about Venom. Let There Be Carnage. Do you share any of the same thoughts we do? What were your feelings about the movie, the character arcs, the story, all that sort of stuff? Did you just go in there and have a good time? Because that's also valid. Let us know all your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe if you haven't already. Unless this video completely turned you off and you're like, fuck these guys, I hope they burn in hell. We'll catch you in the next review, and goodbye.